In this conversation, I sit with relationship coach Nathalie Biviano to explore the complexities of motherhood, the impact of societal and individual expectations on women's roles, and the dynamics of masculine and feminine energies in relationships. It all starts with Nat's beautiful depiction of the Disney scene, the one that romanticizes the couple but doesn't guide us on what happens after the kiss, as it were, or in this case, after the baby is born. Some of the themes that we cover in this conversation are resentment, and Nat explains 3 contributing reasons why this feeling is so common both in women and in relationships, and how to approach resentment from a different lens. We talk about the importance of self-worth, communication, and breaking the cycle of hypermasculinity as a way to connect and validate one another. This is a very honest and practical conversation, and the way that Nat expresses her wisdom with transparency and real-life practical examples, I'm sure will have you wanting to write notes to implement in your own life and relationship. Enjoy the episode. We ask that you forward this on to your mama friends, and we'd love to know what your key takeaways are. Enjoy. I'm more than thrilled to welcome Nathalie Biviano to the podcast. We've kind of crossed paths over the years, haven't we, Nat? Primarily, I think, through Mama Rising or the Matrescent course through Amy Taylor Kabaz, and I've kind of watched
Yes.
you and watched your passion for life in general. Your zeal for life is very palpable, but also I love your work. So please introduce yourself to our audience, and how you've come to be the mama you are today, and where you've landed in your work.
Oh, Katura, thank you. Firstly, just thank you, beautiful, for your kind words and for inviting me to come on to your podcast to speak to your listeners. And so, yes, my name is Nathalie Biviano, and I help ambitious married mothers to feel held and seen by their
Mm.
husbands. And I guess to kind of loop that, how this kind of lands in with how they came to be, you know, I feel like you always teach what you need to learn.
Mm,
And so
true.
this really evolved very organically from a very personal struggle.
Mm,
And as you know, when we hit the motherhood stage, when we enter this new world, as you and I have learnt and become acquainted with matrescence, like it upheaves your entire life. And so for me personally, it really hit me on an emotional level, and the emotional disconnect that I experienced with my husband, and
mm,
that really shone a light. The torch basically made it very obvious as to where my work needed to be. And the more I started, I guess, unraveling and discovering and exploring, I heard lots of other women share resonance. And then it really
mm.
just kind of evolved from there.
Yes, I'm curious, was this your work before having children or completely different?
Oh my gosh, completely different.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, would it be cool, Katura, like if I just shared maybe a little backstory, right? Just to give
Yeah,
you a little bit of
please.
context, would that be cool? Okay.
Yeah.
So, so I'm an 80s kid, right? I'm a Disney 80s kid, legit Disney kid, because my late father, who I lost now, 11 years, he was an animator who worked for Disney, right? And
Oh, wow,
so,
okay. Yep.
yeah, and so legit,
So the
legit,
real deal.
the real deal. And so our weekends were like Disney Coachella, listening to like soundtracks of Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, The Lion King, like just it was anthems that I would hear in our household, watch and observe my dad do all these drawings. And so what that did was just, it seeded to the little girl in me, like, one day you too shall have your prince. And and so you know what? That one day it arrives. He arrives, not in a horse and carriage, but in fact, his Ducati, and we have this really dreamy romance. Like you can totally imagine.
Mm.
So, the weekend is away, the beautiful dinners, the Harbour Bridge climb, just wow. And I'm like, get real, like dreams so do come true, right? That was I guess
Yeah.
meeting that Disney dream. And here's the thing, Katura, with Disney, what they didn't do, what they failed to do, was to show you what happens after the kiss.
Mm.
They drop an Elton John sonnet, and it kind of has you to believe that you can feel the love tonight forever. And then so
Mm.
when you don't feel that love in those moments, I found myself deeply questioning, what the hell is this?
Mm.
I really had a very, very clear moment of when that occurred for me. And, just to answer your question, what was I doing before motherhood? Like I swapped the corporate life for stay-at-home mum life. So when I did from this transition of heels to homemaker, it completely unravels you. It
Mm.
completely just questions your entire identity and where your value is held. And so I'm, trying to do baby on boob, and I'm trying to contribute still financially to feel a sense of contribution and to feel a sense of value. And so one night, right, I'm up late because I want to finish off this invoice so I can help my husband. And he's out on the tools. He's a mechanic, and he's out putting a roof over our head, and he comes home. He walks in. He sees baby crying, laptop open. And when you've been with a baby all day and you're just tapped out, you know what I'm talking about, right? When you just
Totally.
you're just like, I'm okay with hearing a baby cry. But that's not what he sees. He sees baby crying, laptop open, and he just loses it. He loses it. He goes, are you just gonna stay on that effing laptop? And Katura,
Ooh.
oof. Oh God, man, this happened so many years ago, and even just now resharing that, I'm
Yep.
like, I feel the visceral
Yes,
response,
I did
you
too.
know, and especially if your love language is words of affirmation, which mine are, like that just pierced me. And it
Mm.
and it penetrated so deep, so deep. And that night I just remember like curling up in fetal position, just silently sobbing, feeling so misunderstood, feeling so unsupported, feeling so invisible, and it just kind of questioned all the things, right? And you're like, hang on, what happened to that guy? Hang on,
Mm.
all these attachments to these dreams, these fantasies of
Yeah.
what it was supposed to look like, right? And you're like, hang on,
Mm.
what? Hang on, wait, what? No one told me that this is what it was supposed to look like. No one showed you. Disney doesn't show you what happens after kids, right? It doesn't show you
Mm.
the Simba and Nala masculine feminine dance. It doesn't show you how to resolve conflict. It doesn't show you what happens when your husband just totally annihilates you with words. They don't show you any of that, right? And so you're just left in this pile of funk, and you're like, oh, okay, so is this the way it's supposed to be now? Are we
Mm.
that different? And so all the questions, and I really asked myself in that moment. I'm like, okay, I I know that we're not the first or the last people on planet Earth to have children. Surely someone's worked this out. And in that moment, I really decided to become a master of my marriage, Katura. And what does that mean? It means just, becoming a student every day. And so to kind of loop back to your question, is this something that I did before motherhood? No, it wasn't. It was a new world of learning.
Yeah, thank you so much for explaining your story with such authenticity and such rawness. Because there's no point sugarcoating. This is the sort of things that do happen behind closed doors that, women are often internalizing and self silencing, and like you said, probably just thinking, is this what it's all about? Okay, this is what parenthood is. I'll just have to
Mm,
get on with it. Things have
mm,
changed. We're never going to be the
mm,
same again.
mm,
And this is it. And, sometimes those cracks might be there before children, but
mm,
we don't notice, do we?
mm.
We sort of think we've got a fair arrangement and that there's equal share of the load, whether that's our careers or our paid work, and then our household duties. It sort of feels fair and reasonable and equal because we don't have the extra responsibilities and challenges, and we don't have, all that extra load that we have once we bring children into the world. And, this podcast, it's postpartum is forever. So it's mostly talking about the
I love
fact
that.
that,
Postpartum is forever.
yeah, and it's not to depress anybody because I think that's what sometimes might evoke in people, but it's to say that we are always changing and evolving and
Mm,
growing throughout our whole mothering lifespan. And it just makes so much sense that if we're transitioning and adjusting, so
mm,
is our partner.
mhm,
And we
mhm.
don't talk about it. We don't get the education we need. I really believe it should be part of the education of antenatal, the antenatal education to prepare us. So
Mm,
then it,
mm.
it does leave mothers feeling like they are taking on the bulk of the
Yeah,
mental load, the bulk of the
yeah.
emotional load, particularly when it comes to the household. So
Mm,
I'd love it if you could help us understand more this kind of masculine, feminine energy, how
mm.
that plays into life as parents.
Oh gosh, what a
Well, it's a
big,
huge
beautiful, and
question.
loaded question. Yeah. I think, I suppose I can start with just these really powerful, succinct words by Courtney Martin. She is a an author that pretty much distilled what the feminist movement created, right? So
Mm,
when we talk about, I guess, culturally, the systems that exist outside of us, and being, the patriarch being one of those systems, the education system being one of those systems, our family of origin, our societal systems being one of those systems, right? And then as part of our upbringing, especially our generation, Katura, we were really given a very bold message from the feminist movement, a very necessary movement that speaks to women getting the equality and the equity. And you know what, yes, you have the right to vote, to earn money, to have a voice, right? All of those things were so necessary. And here's what happened: we were given this message that you can you can do it all,
mm.
you can have it all.
Yippee!
You didn't even need a
Yeah,
man. You've got your
yeah.
education, you've got your degree, you go girl. The world is your oyster. Like, we heard this
Mm,
message over
mm,
and over and over and over again. Super empowering, right?
mm,
Necessary for women like us who have, drive and ambition and want to make an imprint in the world. Served us so well, right? It served us so well.
mm,
And so let me circle back to what Courtney Martin says. She said, we were told you can have it all, yet we internalized it as I must do it all.
mm,
And that is the distinction. That is the difference. That is why women feel like they have to do it all. Like that, why does the load feel so heavy on women? And sure, we were, oh gosh, this is such a big conversation in terms of what were the expected gender roles, what were the cultural roles that influence what it is a woman should not do, what a mother should not do, what a wife should not do, all these things, right? This comes from so many different variables. But essentially, there's this big message that you can. You can have it all. And therefore we internalize it as I must do it all. And it's so unconscious. It is so, so subliminal, deep in our psyche. And because we have the capacity, because we have the competency, and because we have, just, I guess, this primal need to be accepted, loved, feel like a sense of belonging, that there's I guess a lived experience where women are pleasing others to
Mm.
get that love, acceptance, connection.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And then so why do we say yes? Yes, because we can do it, and because we want to be loved. And so, there's this, I will just do it. I will just take it on, and to the detriment of her own sense of self, sense of being. And it doesn't really the cracks don't become so apparent until it does, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like they're so small, and just the way that compound interest works, it's kind
Yeah.
of like the same thing, right?
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I was going to
Um,
say that actually. Like, firstly, the other thing is we have a desire to nurture. So
yes,
that also makes us think we can do it.
yes,
We want to
totally
look
right.
after everyone. We want everybody to be happy, and we
100%.
feel good doing that. And it's
Yes,
not necessarily a bad thing until it becomes unhealthy.
yes.
And
Thank
as
you for mentioning that.
you've just said, like, I know from absolute personal experience, that it's okay to be doing it all until it's not. So it is like
Yep.
it's yes, isn't it? As you said, it compounds. It's sort of, yeah, we don't mind, we don't mind, we don't mind, we don't mind, we don't mind. Now we're resentful.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And okay, all right. So let's. Oh my goodness, let's start to layer in this
Yeah.
lens of the masculine and the feminine, right? And so, if this is a new concept to your listeners for the very first time, a really high level, I guess, um, image I want you to consider is the masculine is the cup, is the container, is the holder, is the structure, is the anchored, stable support, and the feminine is the fluid, the water. So there's the cup, and then there's the water. And so the feminine, she's in free flow, and she's in such movement, and she is just moving left, right, and center, and she needs somewhere to land in the masculine, right? And so within us, whether we are female, male, identify in between, it doesn't matter. When we're talking about masculine and feminine, it's an energetic spectrum, and we can kind of go, one is the purpose, the cup,
Mhm.
the solid structure, the purpose. I'm on a mission. And when you're in purpose mode, when you're in protect mode, you have got a task to do. You have got an outcome to produce. You have got things to get on with. There's no way you and I would have achieved life and accomplished and been where we are without our masculine energy. So we both
Yeah.
hold it, right? And then when you think about these concepts in a relational sense, in the dance, what happens is that in the the mode of operation that a modern mother finds herself in, and this is through the work that I've done with so many women, Katura, by the time they come and see me and have a conversation with me as to why they feel so disconnected, is
Mhm.
because they are operating in hypermasculinity,
Mm.
is because they are constantly in do, go, 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 let's get this done mode, right? And to kind of add deeper context to this, it doesn't matter whether you're in paid work or unpaid work, whether you're
Mm.
working inside the home or outside the home. That is irrelevant. You are still in masculine mode, right? And especially when you're kind of caretaking a baby, and you have clothes to wash, food to buy, food to cook. Like, this is all masculine energy. And let me share with you, Katura, a super funny story. Funny, ha ha ha, not really at the time funny, because that's when I really saw my amplified masculine energy. And to your point, to your words, it's great and wonderful until it's not. I can do it, I'm okay with this, and then I just get resentful. And so I would put on clothes on the washing machine I would listen to a podcast because I wanted to kind of stay updated. I wanted to
Yeah.
stay relevant. I wanted to hear the latest thing that's happening in the world of business and marketing. And, they're just like, I needed that intellectual stimulation. So I'm consuming that. I'm hanging things on. I'm reaching down because I still want to, stay fit and informed. So I'm doing squats, getting the laundry. So I'm just knocking out. You have no idea the level of efficiency that I was in. Like, it was just like on double time, like trying to do so much in
Mm,
such little time. Because here's what happened out of that, right? You can just imagine me, right,
mm.
operating in that level of double
I
speed,
can.
like, you know what I mean? You're bulldozing. You're like, get out of my way. And then so when the kid
Mm,
goes, "Hey, mama," you're like, "What?" Like, it is
mm,
because you are just, I'm on a mission, and it's almost like you are so hyper focused that anything that kind of comes in your way is almost like a burden, or like a, why are you interrupting me? Get out of my way. Like
yes,
that type of mode, right? And so
yes.
you can see where this is going. You can see what happens when we are operating as women in an over out of balance mode. And so this is what I say, Katura. This is what is the biggest problem is in modern marriage, in modern motherhood, in modern connection, trying to make it all work, is that women are operating in hypermasculinity. And when we
Mm,
have two partners both operating in the same energy, there's no polarity, there's no opposites, there's no connection, because intimacy, passion, connection requires polarity. And then
mm,
when we are in masculinity, he is in his masculine. Like, at best, you get roommates.
mm,
And then kind of on the worst side of that is you get competitors,
mm,
right? And so you've got roommate status or competitors. And neither of those two are sexy, if you know what I mean, right? In
mm,
terms of what do we deeply want? We want that passion, that aliveness, that intimacy, that depth that we have with
mm.
our partner. And then when we are both in that masculine energy, it is it repels. It doesn't happen. It's not its natural order. So that's what I see happening.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's going to make us a lot of sense to a lot of women, and probably, again, very unconscious of this, that they are in that hypermasculine mode,
Mm,
because
mm,
it's, oh gosh, it is that messaging that we can do it all. And
yeah,
so if we aren't working, so as in inverted commas, working,
yeah,
we feel like we need to oh, substitute that.
yeah. What a great word. Yeah,
Substitute that with what we think is hard work,
yeah.
because it's only going to be hard work that's going to make us, give us that sense of approval that we're doing enough.
Bingo,
Yeah.
bingo.
How
It's
sad,
this.
really.
Oh gosh, I'm getting goosebumps just
Mm.
hearing and reliving this conversation about what it is that we need to do internally to validate, or to. It was almost like I was always just trying to prove my
Yes,
value,
yes. I can
to
so
approve
relate.
of me.
Yeah.
Like, see me. Can you see how valuable I am? I'm totally
Yeah.
doing this, and this. And let me kind of just bulldoze through this to-do list, because let me get onto the more valuable things. And the more valuable things is me, making strides in my business, because in business is where you can generate income. Let me focus on those
Mhm.
high value tasks, because when I generate income, I will be of importance, and then you will see how significant I am, right? And so that's where I was chasing my value. I would just race through and bulldoze through the other tasks, the cooking, the domesticity, right?
Mm,
Because me, Natalie, personally, didn't see value in that.
mm,
Why? Because when I was growing up, when we did subject selection, there was no aspirational job to be a stay-at-home mum. That was
mhm,
not part of what you would choose as a career. There was no value attached to that. And so therefore, it was my own internal patriarchy. It was my own internal where I placed value. I didn't place value on being a stay-at-home mum. I
Yeah.
raced through the items because there was no value there, because I
Yeah.
wouldn't be appreciated or approved there. And then
Yes.
so you can see where this is going, right? It just becomes this train wreck because I'm chasing value in areas that I was never going to receive it. And then so I would be so like agitated, frustrated, almost offended or insulted that my husband would not appreciate the things that I was doing. Why? Because I didn't even appreciate the things that I was doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then I was like, oh gosh, this was so unconscious. I was so expectant of him to give me the great job, babe. You are doing so well. Gosh, I value what you do for our family. How on earth
Mm.
could you really have that expectation on someone else to fulfill that when you weren't even doing it for yourself?
Yes.
When I wasn't even acknowledging it for myself?
Mm. So true. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, what we're talking about is that if we're not really truly connected with ourselves
Mm,
in
mm,
our worth and our value, how can we
mm.
honestly be truly connected with our partner? And
Yeah.
all that serves to do is really we're drifting now, aren't we? Because almost like
Yes.
we're competing with one another as to who has the most value, who's the busiest, because busy to me was
Mhm.
always productivity. The busier I
Mhm.
was,
Mhm.
the more I felt like
Mhm.
I was doing something
Mhm.
meaningful and important in society. Even if it was just running
Totally.
the kids around to all their appointments, being at the school pickups, going to the assemblies,
Mhm.
going,
Mhm.
being in the
Mhm.
classroom helping. Busy, busy,
Mhm.
busy.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes.
um,
Yes. Oh my god, so much here. Yes.
so many tangents we could go on, honestly. But yeah, what does that do? It makes us feel very um, unfamiliar with our partner. There's no intimacy, and by intimacy we're talking about communication, about seeing each other for our roles,
Mm,
cuddles,
mm,
affection, never mind
mm,
sex. That is often something I hear
mm,
women say, I
mm,
don't think we'll be having
mm.
sex now until our children have grown up. um,
Oh my goodness.
where do we go with that? How do we start to invite connection back into our life as a couple without
Mm,
seeing it as
mm.
something that is just on the to-do list, another thing that we have to find time for? And what if the
Oh
partner
gosh.
is not really receptive and we feel like we're doing all the hard work?
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Sorry for
Such a
always
great
asking layered
question.
questions. I just find
No, no, no. Don't at all be sorry. I think they're so important and so necessary. And I think what was helpful for us to do was just to give the context as to how we end up in this way, right? How do we
mm,
end up in the competitorship? Oh, I've had a really busy day today. Oh, you reckon you've been busy? Well, let me tell you what happened about my day. Like, and so this is like, how do we compete? How do we show that who is more important, if you know what I mean? And then
mm,
so yes, that absolutely diminishes connection. And so the question is, on a very practical level, how do you do that? Well, it starts from recognizing that your full calendar might be contributing to the disconnect.
mhm,
And so where can you allow for some more white space? And here's what I mean by that, Katura, because sometimes you think, well, what is there to take off? I can't. Like, I've got to get the kids to their activity. Well, I've got to get myself to school and do that contribution piece. I've got to do this as well. I've got to get back to that email. And this is the dilemma, right? This is the hard part, because a full calendar, no white space, means that there won't be time for connection, which really means I'm only putting in my calendar the things that I truly value, that are meaningful. And so, what if we actually placed meaning and value on the tasking of going to school, of doing the groceries? What if that were enough? that you didn't have to fill up the calendar with all these extra items of being on a 2-hour podcast, creating an email sequence. You know what I'm saying? Like, what if that were true? What if the value of the unpaid work held as much weight as the paid work? And this is the tricky part, because it's like, well, then how do I put a roof over my head? You know, and these are deeper conversations, but it starts from there. It starts from valuing and clearing up the white space. And does it mean that we have to slot in an hour to connect with our partners? No, it doesn't. But what it does mean, it allows us to just have the space and bandwidth to get back into our feminine. So we're talking about when we're in go, go, go mode, there's no space to exhale. And so if we start to reduce items of our calendar, and then we can find pockets to reconnect with our partners on a very practical level, what might that look like? Yes, especially in the early years, anywhere from the first 5 years, it's pretty much quicksand survival. And yeah, it is go, go, go. And so you can find pockets of simply appreciating your spouse.
Yeah.
And that might even take less than 10 seconds. That might even be a quick text message to say, hey, I'm thinking of you. Especially if their love language is words of affirmation, right? We can really speak to those elements that let our spouse know that we are still thinking of them. And I think what happens in that is there is resistance from a woman that says, why should I have to appreciate him when he doesn't even appreciate me?
Yeah.
He doesn't see anything I do. And so therefore there's just like such a reluctance, a resistance, even like a rebellion maybe, that just,
A
and
stubbornness too.
a stubbornness. What a great word, right? Yeah. And what is it?
Before
What
being
is all of
there.
this?
Yeah.
This is our
I'm the only
pride. This
one
is our
trying.
ego.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And then you hear it, you feel it, you kind of go, yeah, well, why should I? Like, I'm done. I'm exhausted. Like, and I'm the one that has to send the appreciation text. And so here's where I find women, Katura. That's why they come to me, because they're like, I'm disconnected. I want us to be a team again. I actually really miss and crave us. I know he's a good man. I know I have a good heart. Like, the two well-intentioned people are being trapped because of, yes, their exhaustion, and they're
Yeah.
trapped because of also their ego that comes into play. Yes, all of these things. And here's the thing. Here's where I kind of land with that. The question then comes down to, well, who goes first? And the Buddha says this. The Buddha says our suffering comes from our attachment. And so I would ask in these moments, if you feel that grapple, that internal grapple, what am I attached to? Because you are suffering. You are suffering from not feeling that closeness, that intimacy, that connection, that play, that fun, that joy, that presence. That's the suffering that I hear women go through. And so, if our suffering comes from our attachment, you have to ask yourself, what are you attached to? And often it's always like, I'm attached to my need to be right. Right? Which means, okay, if we're starting to break this down, gosh, we went deep really fast, really quickly, right? So
Yeah.
I hope that's okay. I hope that's okay. And so here's where I'll kind of land with that. No, he should go first. I'm already holding everything. When we hesitate, we hand over our power.
Say that again.
When we hesitate, we hand over our power. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means, no, stuff that. Screw him. Oh, what? As if I'm not already doing enough. Remember the I must do it all
Yes.
versus I can have it all.
Yes.
And this is our internal script that's driving it all, right? The belief that I must do it all. Not what? Again, it's on me. to send the appreciation text. Again, it's on me to initiate that first hug. Again, it's on me to lead this. And it's like, nah, I'm not going to. The hesitation, nah, forget it. And so when you hesitate, you're banking on someone else to make the first move. And when
Yeah.
you hesitate, you hand over your power. You're saying, I'm waiting on you to make me feel better. I'm waiting on someone else, an external circumstance. I'm waiting on someone else's action or inaction to determine how I feel.
Mm.
And so what happens
Mm.
when we hesitate and what happens when we hand over our power? It essentially, and this is kind of where I'm going to land with this, and this may land or this may not land well with listeners. But Kajura, what happens in this circumstance is that we consciously or unconsciously stay in the victim mode.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know this might be really hard to hear, especially when it does feel like everything is on you. And mama, if you are listening to this, oh girl, I hear you, I see you, I feel you. I know the ache of those bleeding nipples. I know the bricks in that backpack that you carry daily. I know the meals that you make and the meals that you burn and the meals that are unappreciated. Oh, I know it, I see it, I feel it, I live it.
Yes.
And when we really can see that the running belief that is driving all of this is that I must do it all, the moment you start to let that go, let me tell you the level of freedom that comes with all of this.
Oh gosh, yes. That takes. I can feel the compassion in that invitation, though, from you. It by no means is to make any mama feel any worse about herself than she might already feel, or any more
100%.
guilt. No,
100%.
no guilt, no judgment,
Mm,
no
mm,
criticism. But do
mm,
we want to be stuck
mm,
in feeling the way we're feeling in a year's time, 5 years' time, forever? Or are we ready to make ourselves the source of our happiness, not being, like you're saying, not giving that power? Because I
mm,
guess I wouldn't have even thought about it that way at one point, that I was
mm, mm,
actually
mm.
projecting my own power to somebody else. But the more I think about it, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because if we're waiting for that, we could be waiting for the rest of our life.
Yes. Yes.
In
And
honesty, and sometimes it
uh,
takes a brave person to say, "I'm stepping up and I'm gonna show the way."
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and lead by
And
example. Yeah.
and Katura, oh gosh, this is the soul of the work that I do with women. It is basically saying there is absolutely another way. There
Mm,
is absolutely another way to rewrite and to redivert and to recalibrate the way that our train has been going. You know what I mean? And you kind of go, there is another way, and that way is leading through the lens of the feminine, leading through that deep compassion, that deep level of kindness and care for you
mm,
first and foremost, right?
yeah.
Because where does all the heaviness come? It comes from our own expectations of ourselves. I should be able to do this.
Mhm.
I should be able to, get a kid to school on time without losing it because they didn't tie their shoelaces up. I should be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it starts very early.
And gosh, there is so much missing from the equation, because once upon a time we used to have a village that would meet our needs
Mm.
as women. We've become village-less mothers. That is
Yes.
modern marriage. That is a huge fundamental difference as to why it does feel like we need to do everything. And what happens in that dynamic is the needs that were once met through a big collective of of women, 20 plus women, mum, aunts, cousins, sisters, friends, neighbors down the road. Like that just doesn't happen anymore, or very rarely is that still a reality. And so what happens, those needs used to be met by so many people, and now it is met by one person. The expectation that one person is going to meet that need. And so, Katura, what I've really established in where we end up and why women are so craving this connection, at the same time she's really resentful. And so it's almost like, how do you reconcile these two contrasting states? Let's have a look at why resentment occurs. And over the years, I've seen it now. I can see it as clear as day. I picked up a pattern and I've established there's 3 reasons why resentment occurs. And so I'm wondering, would it be helpful for me to share that with you, with the listeners here, as to what creates resentment?
Absolutely. Yep.
Resentment comes from not asking for what it is that we need. Resentment comes from not holding and adhering to our own boundaries. And resentment comes from unrealistic expectations.
Yep.
And so, what I hear frequently, probably the biggest piece of what creates resentment, is those expectations. Yeah, but he should just know. We've been together for 20 years and he still can't figure this out, and he still can't see that I'm struggling here, that I'm seething in silence. Why can't he just step up? He should just know, right? The moment we use language such as should, like that's an expectation. He should just know. I expect him to know. I expect him to mind read, right? So expectations, and then not asking for what it is that we need. Why should I have to ask? It's a real challenge for women to ask for what it is they need, often because they actually don't know what it is that they need. And what comes forward comes from a place of a heaviness, a complaint that shows up as a nag,
Yep.
because that's how we're taught. We're taught to air our frustrations in that way, and then I guess expect our partners to kind of receive that and go, oh, that's what you need instead. But instead, what happens in the real world, it actually, it either diminishes him, emasculates him, or just makes him again feel like, wow, I'm not doing enough, I'm a failure. And then that just creates withdrawal, shutdown,
Yep.
and just the disconnect, right?
More disconnect. Yes.
And this is, I really want to highlight again, I really want to emphasize again, Katura, this is of no fault of us, if that makes sense. It's not to say, well, you're to blame for all of this. No, 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 no. No one was taught these skills. No one. Like I
Mm.
said, Disney kind of just painted this picture for us to believe that it was just going to take care of itself. Once we get married, life just kind of takes us on this magic carpet ride. No, it doesn't. No one were taught these skills. Yes, you already alluded to that this should be part of the core educational curriculum, that we have relational skills. And so
Yep.
what happens in that masculine and feminine dance, these are skills, right? And this is the good news. I know this conversation sounds maybe a little bit heavy and a bit doom and gloom, but I promise you there
Yep.
is absolute light, because as we know, right, skills are learnable.
Mm.
And then when you can see it, and I suppose after this conversation, it's kind of like, well, I can't unsee it now.
Yes. Yes.
when you can see it, then you can edit it, right? You can modify it. And so that's the empowering news. That's the good news, because these skills are learnable. And like with anything that we want to kind of create in our lives, we it just becomes a muscle. You just have to
Yep.
exercise that you have to do the sit up. You want the six pack, and you kind of go, yeah, but I listened to this podcast once, and he still didn't even respond. It's kind of like, I want this six pack. I did 10 sit ups, and why isn't my six pack here? Like it takes repetition. It takes consciousness
Yes. And a relearning.
and a relearning. Precisely right, and it's
Because as
totally
yeah,
doable.
It is, and that is the beautiful part of it because it's like our matrescence and it's like the changes that happen to us. I
Mm,
think,
mm.
as women, we tend to focus on what we've lost, you
Oh
know,
gosh, yes.
so we
Yes.
sort of like we're not the same, that the language is all about how, how we've negatively how becoming a mother has negatively impacted the individual
Mm,
that we
mm.
thought we were. We thought we were, if I might,
Right.
repeat.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it's,
Yes.
and then as you said, the romantic side of things, the fairy tale, what we thought that becoming a couple would mean, and then what we thought
Mm,
becoming a couple of children would mean, becoming parents. We think that that's just going to enhance our relationship so much
mm,
because now we've
mm.
created this little person together, and it's just
Mhm,
going to bring us
mhm,
so close, and we're going to
mhm,
see each other for all the amazing things we do. But the reality
mhm,
is we are changing. Our life may look different and we may
mhm,
feel different, but different isn't
mhm.
bad.
Oh, I love that so much. I
Yeah,
love that so much.
I think we do tend to think different is bad. It's it's
Yes.
it's like, oh, now we've got the second rate life. We've got the
Mm,
life that's going to be very perfunctory. And maybe it
mhm,
will be for a
mhm.
little while, but it doesn't have to stay there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the most powerful sequence of words I heard you just share there was, I thought this is what was going to look like. I thought this would enhance this. Right? And just these thoughts that we have, there's a requirement in that process. And there's, and you and I know this work in terms of what is required to get through that process of what we once thought versus what is
Mm,
actual lived experience,
exactly.
is that there needs to be like a grieving process,
Yes.
right? We have
Yeah.
to really go through this surrendering of seasonally, like the way that a snake sheds its skin, like it's not good, bad, right, or wrong. Like it just is. You know what I mean? Like it just it will its skin will shed, its scales will just be left behind. And I think what happens in our world is that that Disney dream is so ironclad that we don't want to let go of it.
That's it.
Right? And then there's just these new versions and iterations of us that
Mm.
require that level of, no, you just keep going. Like the scales are totally fine to be left there. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mm,
No, it's so true. I kind of thinking about our teacher, Amy Taylor Kabaz, too, and her
yes.
analogy of being on the train and stopping
Yeah.
at individual stations,
Yes.
and as
Yes.
we're going through this grieving process, because there is
Mm,
loss, there is in
yes.
life,
Yes.
there's always a
Yes.
letting go and then a gaining.
Yes.
There is, but we
Yes.
don't want to stay in any one of those emotions and become paralyzed in it. We want to be
Mm-hmm,
able to come
mm-hmm.
through the other side, get off the train.
Yeah. Yes.
Actually start
Right.
a new chapter of our life. Yeah, I really like that one. It makes a lot of sense. What a beautiful conversation that we're having. I'm really hoping
I
that
love this.
so we could talk all day. I'm hoping that a lot of women and couples are going to get so much from this. And I know that your focus is the woman because perhaps you can share with us something positive. Sorry to put you on the spot, but
No,
what
not at
you
all.
have seen in maybe a woman that you've worked with that you've have been able to witness her growth, because often these expectations of ourselves and the three ways that we feel resentful, they're so ingrained. And
Mm-hmm,
so it
mm-hmm,
takes a long time or a lot of hard work, or let me take out the word hard, a lot of work
mm,
to
mm,
actually come out the other side with this unlearning and new way of
mm,
looking at
mm,
what it is to be a couple and a woman
mm,
in this modern world.
mm.
How have you seen a woman unravel in a way so that our listeners can actually see that there are real life examples of this?
Yeah, what a great question. Oh, okay. So usually the way it shows up, right, is there's a questioning, there's an intersection. There is this. I'm at a crossroads of, is this the way it's supposed to be? And are we that different? Have we deviated so much, my husband and I, that this is kind of like this is it for us? And so
Mm.
I'll hear that. And so the woman realizes, she actually realizes, I, I'm done blaming.
Mm.
I'm, I can see that there's futility in that, because if this is my pattern that is creating this level of conflict and disconnect with us, I have to own that. Because if I don't, okay, sure, if I decide that maybe we are so different and maybe this chapter is closing for me and then I'll move on to my next relationship, what happens there is that she then takes it with her to her next relationship. And
Mm.
so I'm sharing a real life story of a client of mine.
Yes.
She's so beautiful, and she really, these are her words, right? She goes, I have to own what's mine. So
Mm.
essentially, it's like, I can't change my spouse. I have zero control over my partner. And here's what I always tell my clients, right? We can never change them. We can only change our participation in the pattern.
Yes. Yeah.
And so to kind of circle back and to answer your question about this client who I'm thinking about, she knows that, an empowered woman steps into this level of self-ownership, and she says, what is my side of the street? How can
Mm.
I clean up my side of the street? What expectations am I holding? What am I not asking for? What boundaries am I not adhering for myself? Like, these are the elements that I have seen time and time again that creates the resentment, that creates that disconnect. And when they come into my world, they can really unpack that and see for themselves. Oh my goodness, I can see where I have just these really unrealistic expectations of my husband. I mean, we've themed on this. Where can we rewrite?
Yes.
And then where can we see our differences, not as a fear or frustration, but more of as a curiosity? Where
Yeah.
can we start to invite conversations that kind of goes, oh, babe, I'm really noticing, my goodness, I'm changing so much. I am like really noticing a new iteration of me. And in me changing, that kind of inevitably changes us. And I would really love for you to just explore this with me.
Yes. Love that.
I'm really noticing that, you know, your frustration levels of me are kind of increasing. And I'm just noticing that.
Yeah.
And what we have together, what we've built together, what we've dreamed of together is still my number one priority. And I really want to make that work. Will you come on this with me?
Oh, I love that. Yeah. It also makes it also makes them feel valued as well. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
when
yeah.
dads can often feel very disconnected in terms of they don't have as big a role with the child in the early stages. So it also makes them feel like you're in this with me. Let's do it together. Yeah.
Totally right. And so what I've really noticed when my clients take that self ownership, that self responsibility, she's the most empowered in the most elegant and graceful feminine way. It is just glorious to witness, because she has this glow about her that then he starts to recognize,
Mm.
and then he starts to get magnetized to that.
Yes.
He
Mm.
wants to be closer to that energy,
Mm.
right? And so when she kind of knows, how do I show kindness, compassion, and nurturing, self-care, all these things for myself? How do I put in these boundaries? How do I ask what it is that I need with kindness without demanding it, right? When we kind of remove those elements, and this is all about just, new skills that we can learn, he sees that, Katura, and he wants more of it.
Oh, getting goosebumps. Yeah.
And so,
How wonderful to observe.
yeah, and this is what's totally possible. I saw this client go from a dynamic of seeking permission
Mm.
and seeking just his validation. And yeah, it's so invisible, because us as independent capable, competent women kind of go, I
Mhm.
don't need anyone's permission, but our actions and our behaviors suggest otherwise. Right.
Yeah.
And so when we really can see this, acknowledge, here's what I always say to my clients. It's like, no, we don't ask for permission. Like, you ask for support, not permission.
Mm.
You ask for support, not permission.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And this client who I'm thinking about in particular, like, this is just one of, I think, the biggest pieces that has moved the needle for her, because now she says, I'd really love to do this. Here's where I'd love your support. Versus in the past, it would be like, do you reckon I could do this thing? And
Mm,
it's like we wait for a permission slip to be signed off by our husbands to
mm,
kind of do the thing that we want to do.
mm, mm.
When really it's like, how do we give ourselves that permission first and just own it? Yes, I do want to be more visible in my business. I do want to launch this thing. I do want to elevate in my career. I do want to be a stay-at-home mum and put on that apron and really own it, right? It doesn't matter what we want. It's like, as in where that
Yes.
trajectory goes, but it is a matter of kind of giving ourselves that permission first. It is a matter of removing the judgment and all the shoulds that come with that decision and that ownership.
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah. It's yeah, truly a beautiful thing for a woman to really own her own worth and to step
Mm,
into that. You must feel so much satisfaction in seeing that. And as you said, it's about empowering. It's not
mm,
about
mm.
saying one career path, one job, one role, one hat
Mm,
is more
mm,
important than the other. It's about
mm,
how that
mm.
woman truly feels inside.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. I'm so happy that you've come on today to chat about these things. It's so important. And it's such a hard gig being a mum, and a lot of it is because you've said we haven't got the support that we used to have. And
Mm,
so
mm.
the shoulds just become more and more and more as we get more progressive, so to speak, in
Sure,
our
sure.
society. Yeah.
Totally right. Totally.
Yeah. So if women are listening and thinking, this is really resonating, I'd love to talk more to Nat, how can we
Mm.
find you? What sort of things have you got coming up? I know you've got something really exciting that you're working on right now.
I do. I do. Thank you so much for for inviting me to come in and speak to your listeners, and two, just for allowing me just to share how they could get more of this conversation. Thank you, Katura. I really appreciate you. And so two ways. There's two ways. In the I guess in the virtual world, in an
Mm,
online village type of world, I have a free Facebook community, and it is just filled with so much juice where we talk more at length of these real and raw conversations.
mm,
So I invite anyone who's listening here, if you want to be a part of that, just send me a DM, go to my public profile page, Nathalie Biviano, and you'll see a link to join that Facebook group, that free Facebook
mm.
group. And so they can come into in that way. Or if there's a woman out here that says, no, I want to feel skin to skin, hand on heart, pulse to pulse, let me just,
Yep.
like, get into full human connection mode, I do have a live retreat on the Gold Coast between the 8th and the 11th of May. And so if that's of interest, we are going to go deep. If whoever is listening to this and kind of goes, yep, this is where I can have that depth of support, of that sisterhood, of that sanctuary, of having the space to be able to just, go deeper here and really reconnect, re-anchor, re-navigate with who I am, then that might be for you as well. And again, just, you could totally DM me for details on that's coming up.
I'll have all of that in the show notes, but how
Okay.
exciting. So that's an
Oh,
in-person event.
it is.
And this
Yes,
is the first one you've done like this?
it is. And
Yeah.
so, I run an online program with my clients. And so for so long, right, they've been saying, Nat, do something in person, Nat, do something in person. I think, sometimes you get so cozied and convenient with Zoom that
Yes. Yeah.
truly we are missing that. I spoke about it. We miss village. We miss we miss connection. And gosh,
Absolutely. Yeah. We need that.
we
We're not designed
do.
to be disconnected and doing it on our own.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah. Yeah. So
Oh,
that's
that's gonna
so
be
there.
fabulous.
Yes, it is. It really is. Oh my
I'm
goodness,
just
I cannot
having
wait.
some
There's
details myself, I think.
Oh my gosh, totally, totally. You should totally come along. It'll be so much fun. And
Yeah.
this is how these things go, right? You have the space to cry, to laugh, to
Mm,
share, to really connect with women who just get it. You know what I mean? Like no words necessary. You kind of just sit in that space and you kind of go, I see you. I know why you're here. I get it. I get it. And when you are in proximity in that environment, this is where you really feel seen and supported.
mm,
And this is what women truly just want to experience.
mm.
Katura, this is what I've
Yeah.
come to know. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we deeply crave that, but also I want to say you deserve that. You are worthy of
Yes.
that. So for
Yes.
the mamas listening, like we can make a lot of excuses as to why we can't do something like that. And I'm not discounting that it may take a bit of work or a bit of preparation to do that, but
Mm, mm,
imagine what
mm,
can come out of that, and imagine
mm,
the woman and the mama that you can come back to your family after experience something that truly does nourish your soul and make you feel seen and heard in such a beautiful way. Nat,
mm.
yeah, yeah, thank you. And everything that you've said has been, as I expected, dynamic and extremely personal and authentic. And I love you for that. And I look forward to chatting with you more in the future.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for bringing this conversation to more women who need to hear it. Appreciate your work and what it is that you do for all the lives that you touch. Katura, it is a gift, and motherhood is so hard. And so thank you for your part in the mission.
I think I will pause before I get teary. Thank you, Nat.
Thank you.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode and that it offered something helpful to your own mothering experience. If you are a pregnant woman or know someone who is, head over to my website to receive your free copy of the postpartum checklist and contact list. And if you'd like to be better prepared for your postpartum, both practically and mentally, purchase the Peaceful Postpartum ebook, a 52-page interactive guide on what you need to know and what matters most in postpartum. And so that we can get these conversations out to more mothers, I'd be grateful if you could like, share, and review this podcast, and we'll see you next